Thank you everyone for coming back. I hope tea time was wonderful. We will begin the second half to our session now. Again, reminder, if you want to purchase t-shirts, that link is now available. Our next speaker is Mei-Jung Su, discussing broadening access to natural history, a public engagement of the National Museum of Natural Science in Taiwan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I am Mei-Jung Su from National Museum of Natural Science. The topic of my presentation today is broadening access to natural history, public engagement at the National Museum of Natural Science in Taiwan. I will share the experiences of unpacking storage series in our museum. This may explain the main role of museum collections to conserve and revitalize as the public guardians and facilitate. Let's start with an overview of our museum. Established in 1986, we are a quite young natural history museum. The main building was completed in 4 phases. In addition, we have 3 affiliates related to earthquakes and birds. Our collection departments including biology, geology, and anthropology, with a total of 11 divisions. Now, let's take a look at our collections. As of June 2024, we have more than 17 million pieces of collections, the largest number of which are insect specimens, followed by plant specimens. These are the long-term results of 37 researchers and several technicians and volunteers related to the collection. What is a museum? The definition of a museum has been established in 1974, and it has a new definition at the 2022 ICOM Prague Conference. The new concepts that emerge from the new definition, such as accessibility, inclusion, diversity, and sustainability, are not actually new and reflect the path the museum world has been moving forward in the past 2 decades. And offering varied experience for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing has always been a very important mission of museum. Toward our 50th anniversary in 2036, we propose praise as our strategic growth. Preservation. Preservation uses technology and the open method to inherit tangible and intangible natural history and cultural assets. Responsibility elucidate the environment and the history of intertwined interaction between humans and non-humans. Cultivate the audience's sense of environmental responsibility and learn from citizen action. Aesthetics. Through the exhibition design, inspire the public experience and becomes a place for leisure and entertainment. Innovation, produce new knowledge related to contemporary life and inspire the audience curiosity to explore. Service, based on equality, create a friendly public space that focus on accessible and inclusiveness. Engagement, combining the power of all walks of life and the participation of all people to jointly explore public issues related to nature and culture. We have 21 storages to store these specimens. Since the museum is built in phases, These collections are stored in different storages according to their types and scattered on different floors. In 2023, we have held a series of activities to open the storage. The first one is to unbox the insect and the plant storage and their preparation areas. The second is to unpack the paleontology storage and clean up the cetacean fossils excavated in 2022. And the last unpack is the archaeological storage for the history of the Aborigines in central Taiwan. The things of the unboxing and their reasons are shown above. The number of applicants for the first time is the highest, and the number of applicants for the anthropology unboxing is the most. We believe that if the date of the event is a holiday or summer vacation, more people will apply. Secondly, if people are familiar with the thing or not is also one of the factors that people concerned. No matter how many people apply, we still understand that museums' collections are to conserve and revitalized as the public guardians and facilitate. Every active took 2 hours and 40 people were randomly selected. We charged about $17. Next, I will take you through pictures to review with me. In addition to explaining how to create and preserve collections, we have prepared many rare specimens and famous paintings made using specimens. With rising conservation awareness, these wing stick art pieces in the past are not longer available. Specimens are not only evidence of biological evolution, but their ancestry may also be advance of a period of history. When Dr. Yang went to Russia to research Taiwanese specimens were stored in abroad, he found that Chinese and Japanese newspapers were used at that time for packing specimens. One of the newspaper contexts showing the same event but have different historical explanations depends on the country's stance. Then he brought the newspapers back and donated them to Taiwan History Museum for recording the history. Allowed people to move heavy cabinets without too much effort when unpacking the paleontology storage. In addition to seeing fossil specimens hundreds of millions of years ago up close, people can also touch and feel them. In 2022, another Dr. Yang and his research team discovered a whale fossil that was about 85,000 years old and more than 15 meters long in South Taiwan. He took it to the museum and cleaned it. During the unpacking activity, he first played a video of transporting fossils, then explained the process and the current status of the cleaning, and finally allowed people to pretend to be a one-day fossil cleaners and carry out the cleaning with tools in hand. Due to the venue, it was not possible for two people with physical disabilities to clean the fossils by themselves. This was a problem that was not thought before, and we can see from the picture, the left and the right And there are two audiences cannot stand up to do the clean fossil. So from that time, we know we should improve and for next time. The public can not only see the archaeological objects up close, but also hold them in their hands and examine them carefully. We found that a grandmother and her granddaughter also participated in this event. When a museum is open, the public can buy tickets to enter the exhibition hall at any time, but the behind-the-scenes value is not accessible to the general public at any time. I believe this grandmother has a different understanding of the museum collections after the event. And on the right side, the grandmother and her granddaughter together to visit our museum collection. After the tour, a Q&A section was held. Participants asked questions and the lecturer answered them. Participants were happy to share their feeling about the event, and some asked very seriously how they could get a job in the museum. After filling out the questionnaire, we took a group photo together. Photos were selected and posted on the official website for people to download. From the total number of 630 applicants for the activities, we found that there are 50 people applied more than twice, and 5 of them participated twice. 4 people participated more than 3 times, and 1 of them participated 3 times. It means someone applied 3 times and got accepted totally. So the lady was very happy, and I was very lucky. Thank you. Okay. The results of 3 questionnaires show that more female than male. The male to female ratio is 52 to 73. More than half are museum fans. Most applicants aged 25 to 49. Most of the applicants live in the Midwest, showing that it is relative to the museum location and get information from the social media such as Facebook. As for the top 3 storages I most want to visit in the future, they are paleontology, birds and mammals, and amphibians and reptiles. Due to the success of the event, we continue to unpack food preserved storage and the tissue culture the laboratory of the Botanic Garden this year, which were also well received. There will also be another unpacking of the anthropology storages by the end of this year. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your talk. We actually don't have time for questions, but if you want to catch our speaker afterwards, please feel free to do so, I assume.
Thank you.
So next up, we have one of our session moderators, Jeanette, giving her talk, and I will let her take it away from here.
Thank you all for attending. So this is a discussion on the use of the measure for the acceptance of the theory of evolution using digitized collections at my institution. So just a little background. In 2012, 50% of the US population did not accept the theory of evolution as a valid theory. And recent surveys by 2020, 37% of the US population did not accept that theory. So it has increased in the US by 14%, that 14% more of the population now believes that that evolution is a valid theory. And some of the reasons that they've discussed this is because of more people attending colleges and going to taking science classes. So there's more exposure to the theory, more exposure to evidence that evolution is a valid reason. Obviously, this is still a problem in the US, but hopefully it is changing. In context to my institution, as Emily mentioned in our talk earlier, CSU Stanislaus is a Hispanic serving institution in California's Central Valley. It's a fairly rural community, mainly agriculture. Everything is 2 hours away, but for the people that live in town, most of them don't really go out unless they're going to the Bay Area on the weekends, or they're going hiking in the foothills or up in the mountains. But for the most part, people that grow up there stay there. Point in context, I grew up there, went to college, went to grad school, got hired back. So now I'm back, right? Like, you leave, you might come back, but for the most part, a lot of people in town don't really leave. It's a mainly migrant community that work in the agricultural fields. The people that own these fields, for the most part, align pretty conservatively, right? So it's a very religious area. It's a fairly conservative area. So access to education, access to higher education sometimes is a challenge in our community. So the study group were my students, because what better place to implement some research than to use our students? I work in the biology department at Stan State, and so I applied this study in the upper division evolution class, which is one of the 4 core courses that our majors have to take. So even if they're not planning on becoming biologists, even if they're just planning on going into medicine or dentistry, they have to take evolution. And I get a lot of questions of, why do I care about evolution? I'm going to be a dentist. And I'm like, cool. And they're like, why do I care about evolution? I'm going to be a doctor. And I was like, well, you should learn this in class this year. Right? So like a lot of them still are just like, what is the point of this class for my career? And so I try to make it relevant to them, and they all have to pass this class regardless of which degree type they are doing, BA or a BS. And so this has been piloted since I've been there for the last 3 semesters, both 2 of my semesters and then one of my colleagues' semesters in the fall. And so the goals of the course itself are essentially for our students to understand the importance of how evolution plays a factor in their life towards their career, and mainly for them to be able to communicate evolution to the rest of the community, to their audiences as they move through their careers. And so I've included the goals for the class. I won't bore you with reading them, but essentially it's for them to understand whether they choose to believe it or not. I know that a lot of them are going to be asked when they go home, what did you learn in evolution? It's fake, it's not real, right? So my main goal is for them to learn how to communicate, whether they believe it or not. They should still effectively be able to communicate the evidence that we have to date of what evolution is. And so to do that, I wanted to assess what the understanding of evolution is in my classroom. I know what mine is. I grew up in the area, but I've also have extensive years of education, right? So I wanted to know what my students, how my students were doing, and the figure didn't show up. So mainly, it is lower. I'm wondering if my updated version did not get uploaded. So this should be fun. So please follow through on my first version, on my first draft of this talk. But essentially, we had about 50% of the students believed in evolution, with around 30% being undecided and 20% being like, no, evolution's not real. So my methodology in this course for them to learn about the theory of evolution is, instead of doing multiple choice question exams, I have them write essays. And so I give them a prompt and they have a month to complete it. I don't care for them to memorize facts. I don't care for them to be doing their assessments and their essays in a controlled environment where I'm watching them, making sure that they're not Googling things. I want them to research the literature. They're expected to find 10 first first primary sources for their evaluations, for their exams. And so I get a lot of pushback where like, oh, that's a lot of work. And I'm like, oh, well, that's too bad. Welcome to college. Like I don't care. But on top of that, I also include 3D lessons within the class from stuff that I did while I was in grad school as well. The class is mainly lecture based. It was designed to be 3 days of lecture. As much as I love talking for 3 days straight at them, I'm sure they get sick of it. So on Fridays, I make sure that they have some activity for them to do that's reinforcing the discussions that we've been having in class. And then they're also in charge of developing museum displays that go help Emily's pop-up exhibits. So it's working in tandem with my grad students as well. So here's just an example of what the written exams look like, but they have 4 exams throughout the semester. They must cite that primary literature, but they can also include examples that we discuss in class. And I hope that they do that at least as a way for them to springboard off when they're looking for literature, because that gets a little scary when you're confronted by Google Scholar and you're like, well, what do I do, right? So I make sure I provide plenty of examples in the lecture that they can then go use in their search. For the 3D lessons, I use 3 lessons throughout the semester, and these change depending on the semester and as we complete the museum displays. But for the most part, we start off with the Chewing on Change lesson, which was developed by CPET at the University of Florida using 3D teeth of horses across time from the Eocene to modern. We do How Big Was Megalodon, and for this last semester, we also did Human Evolution. And so Chewing on Change, we look at how horse teeth have evolved over time depending on changes in climate and changes in the environment. And the students go through these lessons using the teeth that are now reposited in Morphosource. And so instead of printing out 50 sets of teeth, I have them use the online database and have them measure within Morphosource so that they can complete the lessons. And these are all open source. Anyone can use them. You can download the prints, print them out for your own use, or use them within Morphosource itself. You do have to create a login, but it's free to use. And the lesson stuff is on Morphosource as well. If not, just email me and I can send that out. How Big Was Megalodon is looking at 3D printed teeth of a mainly associated jaw of Megalodon that was found in North Carolina, and applying a mathematical formula that had been used for several decades to estimate the size of Megalodon, looking at the size of the teeth. So the students go through the math and try to estimate the length of Megalodon. It turns out that original formula did not actually work for Megalodon. And the students go through that process where they look at the first tooth and they're like, oh my God, the shark's like 80 feet long. And then they look at the last tooth and they're like, oh my God, the shark is 350 feet long. And I was like, well, does that make sense? And they're like, yeah, of course. I'm like, okay, yeah, like go talk with each other and try to figure this out, right? And then at the end, they're like, something's wrong. We did the math wrong. We didn't like follow instructions. And they go through the process that as researchers we do to figure out what was going on. And then I tell them, like, well, it turns out the formula didn't work and someone came up with a new formula, yada, 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 right? And they're like, oh my God, you lied to us. And I'm like, yes, push back, ask questions, right? That is the point of being in college. Critically analyze the material I'm giving you. In the first semester of this, my students recreated the jaw of Megalodon, which I'll talk about. But this last semester, they did Human Evolution, and this was in collaboration with work that Dr. Molly Selba did, and looking at different skulls that we got 3D printed for free at our institution's fabrication lab. They have a grant for educational materials. So I was able to get all of this work done for our students for free, which I think is amazing because that is a lot of money that I would have had invested that our school unfortunately doesn't have the resources for. So for the museum displays, as I mentioned, the first set of students that I had recreated Megalodon using pool noodles and the 3D printed teeth. First, they had to paint the teeth, and so you have an image of the students painting teeth here, and this was as COVID was kind of ending, and so students were doing this with masks. We also, I had them outside for a while with the pool noodles. They had to figure out how to space out the teeth, how to curve the pool noodles, how to do everything, right? I kind of just stood there. I was just like, yeah, that looks great. While they worked on figuring it out, gave them sharp tools, which sometimes I have to remind myself they're adults and not children, but I still have to tell them, you know, like, don't chase each other with scalpels. They get a little wacky after spending all semester with each other. But I think really the fun part was when they started actually building the jaw using chicken wire and plaster bandages, and they had to actually form the jaw of the shark jaw itself. Eventually, the jaw got done. It made it out to LA Comic-Con for a panel that we had as well. It's been used for different science events at our university Science Day. People love to take pictures in the jaw, as shown by Emily and one of our other graduate students, Alejandra. And it's going to be hung up in our fabrication lab since they helped provide access to the teeth. Our building is under fire code, does not allow us to hang things in certain ways. We're working on that, but at least the fabrication lab wants to display this as one of the things that they have done. It's led by one of our art instructors, so he's really committed to bringing 3D and art together, science and art together. As Emily mentioned earlier, we are working on our human evolution display. So here I have our students painting the 3 skulls. This is still a work in progress, but this semester's, the spring semesters, is going to work on actually developing the labels that will go with the display itself. So the students are invested in creating this, and they think it's really cool that the work that they've done is being put out into the community, and that they can be a part of sharing this information with their community. The post-assessment results, which are clearly very well displayed here. At the end of the semester, we did do a post-assessment for every class, and there was an increase overall across all of the questions regarding the students' acceptance to evolution. For the most part, all of the students increased their acceptance of the idea and the theory behind evolution and the evidence behind it by about 30% or so. So we had a big jump in just one semester, which made me feel great as a first-time teacher. My first semester, where I was like, okay, I'm not just talking here, like I'm actually doing something for them to learn. So that gave me confidence as well in my teaching. I can always share this information with you guys later if you want to see these graphics. But some lessons learned. I want to implement this across all of the sections of evolution in class at our institution, just to see how different instructors teach and how that affects how our students learn and accept the theory of evolution, as well as spread out the museum displays across the fall and spring semesters. It gets really rushed in one semester to try to get both all of the lecture material done and all of the activities done. So being more mindful about spreading this across the year will be really helpful. And some future plans. We have some more activities to do. We want to do a big display at our Science Day using 3D printed materials that our students have curated, some microfossils that then can be expanded into macro size. So that's our participants. We bring in over 5,000 community members into the campus for Science Day for them to see all of these activities that are happening. I'm really sorry that my graphics are missing here. And here is also missing some of the references, so I'm very sorry about that. But if you have any questions, I think my time is up. So feel free to see me after this and we can discuss this, but thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's, let's keep things moving this morning. Thank you again, Jeanette. There'll be time at lunch, I imagine, and some of the other breaks throughout the day. So our next speaker is Phaedra Hui-Shih Fang, and she will be giving our presentation. So please take it away for us. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Phaedra Fang from National Taiwan Museum. And so the first slide is not relevant to the presentation, but thank you, Okinawa. This is 13 years ago. I had participated in a camp organized by our university, National Taiwan University, and UQ University. And there I was inspired by the biodiversity of Okinawa. And here I am. And sorry, this is... This is our museum, National Taiwan Museum. It's the oldest still standing museum in Taiwan, founded during Japanese colonial period as a natural history museum. And now it has 4 branches. It included 3 other branch museums in the vicinity to introduce the multifaceted Taiwan. And you can scan the QR code for promo. And so this is a map of our museum. As you can see, that this is Taipei Station. So if you have a chance to visit, it's pretty close, like 1.5 hour flight, then you will get there. And you can see that our museum is the one in the center over here. This is the main building, the oldest one, and it's in the second oldest park in Taipei over here. And in this vicinity, there are a lot of cultural heritage. One of the most famous one is the presidential office. We can actually see the presidential office right when we stand at the second floor corridor of the museum. And as I said, that our museum was founded as a natural history museum. The first director of our museum is a botanist that was born in Hokkaido. His name is Takeya Kawakami. I'm sure many of you probably have heard of him. And he's also the first principal investigator who has ever got to the high mountains of Taiwan to collect plant specimens. So we seem to have a very rich history and collection on natural history, but actually we encounter a lot of challenges. So here's the challenge. There are several challenges. The first is that our museum was actually relocated under the jurisdiction of cultural ministry, even in Japanese period, and now we are under the Ministry of Culture. We are the only natural history museum under the Ministry of Culture. So you can imagine the management, they have no training in natural sciences. And this causes a lot of problem you can start to imagine. And the second that is that we do not have enough budget. Probably we all share a pretty similar problem. We have a cut on the outreach budget, at least 10% every year, and during COVID, it's 30%. And so, well, you probably can also imagine that. And also we are located in the very downtown area of Taipei City and surrounded by only a small patch of Dream Park. And as I said, we don't have budget, so it's very difficult for our researchers to actually travel to national parks or other fields to conduct their research. So I guess this place around us is a very important asset for us. And so centering on urban issues is not a bad thing. I've translated a book by Professor Rob Dunn called Never Home Alone. And he mentioned this in one of the chapters, he mentioned a very interesting phenomenon called the far-sighted ecologist syndrome. Like, we probably know a lot about endangered species, but a lot fewer about the sparrows that live in our households, right? So this is something, because that also means there are a lot of potential of research and outreach on urban ecology. And Taiwan, same as other parts of the world, has a growing population in the cities. In 1982, we have 50% of a population dwelling in the cities, but now it's over 80%. And so the park around us can be a good asset for us to, conduct our museum practices concerning natural history. But what do people do in the park? So here you can see the pictures. You can the pictures speak for themselves. They're the probably #1 ranking actions or things that the visitors would do at the park is feeding animals. And the majority of animals they were feeding, #1 is squirrel, and #2 is all the kind of birds. I don't have the squirrel picture because I was probably yelling at them, so I didn't get to take the photo. But actually the squirrel has something to eat if you're not feeding them in the park. So this is my observation with my colleagues. They're actually something that they can eat. And so I had this ambition when I first worked at the museum. It's actually also my 10-year anniversary of working at the museum. So I thought, we should not just feed animal in the park. The park can also be a source of like ecological tours. And also I was inspired by the concept of the Japanese Hana Zensen. the cherry blossom front. I thought maybe we can create something like that in the park. So targeting on plants. So since when I get in, I had this idea of like promoting urban ecology. And one of the project under this big project, Urban Naturalist Project, is that we collaborate with National Taiwan University Life Science Department, exactly the department I graduated from, to conduct the plant phenology survey in the park. Another incentive for me to do that is that we have a course for the undergrads, a mandatory course that require you to offer services, and usually the services are non-relevant to your academic training. And I thought, why not have these students with biological background to do a biological survey as a kind of training, as a kind of service. So we started since around 2015. And you can see we actually, because we have 4 branches and 2 of the branches are in the green park, so we have 2 survey sites. And for the bigger park, we have, actually there are quite many trees, over 300 trees, and we selected 100 at first and now reduced to 60 as our major targets. And the other park is very small, but managed by our museum. And yeah, and now we have 20 targets. We used to do other events like illustrations, but because the funding doesn't really last, so all these is gone, only the Phenology survey stayed. And you can see this is the evolution of this project. We will have another colleague explaining the methodology, but at first it was purely just environmental education. And as I said, I want to create this blossom front, but then with more experts collaborating with us, we try to also finalize the methods and trying to collect natural history data. It's a way for the museum, without lack of funding, to do research in our vicinity. And this year we are trying to improve our data quality, data assessment, and data control. And these are the feedback from our participants. Although a lot of them, we also recruit high school students, but most of them are from biology department or forestry department. And they said, although they had this training, but they never really, utilize or use this training in their real life. And this program offers them this chance. And now when they walk on the street, they will just try to identify the trees on the street and try to identify the phenology status. And we found that, well, it's actually an opportunity, a solid target audience in urban natural history topics would be the high school and undergrads. So actually last year we have a project targeting on young people, the young generation, aged from 16 to 22. It's actually the policy from the Ministry of Culture to encourage young generation participating in cultural events. But I thought, as we are a natural history museum, we use what we can get because this is also without extra funding to do it. So we can incorporate a storage opening event and also phenological survey and plus the plant specimen making workshop all together. And we received pretty positive feedback. So we thought it's really promising to target on high school students and university undergraduate students to talk about this issue, especially focusing on plants. Usually people look at animals. I'm from the Zoology Institute. I like animals, but once you get to know how to identify plants and see the ecology inside the plants, it's quite useful. And so we then switch our target to their teachers. So we started to have collaboration with networks of biology teachers in Taipei and also nationally to organize workshop for the teacher, hoping that they can bring this structure to their class. And this is the feedback from the teachers. They found that it's actually difficult for a lot of high schools in Taiwan. I should say, a lot of us teachers in Taiwan, because we mostly live in the cities, to take their students outside the campus to a certain natural park. And so if you can just utilize what you have around on the campus, it's very useful to, here you can see how the making and display of plant specimens allow students to learn beyond the textbook and touch the real stuff. So it's very easy, but we didn't do that, and I think we should start doing that. So for the future work, I hope to ensure the quality of the Phenology survey data and produce preliminary analysis. We've been struggling to finalize the methods, and now we have finalized methods, also thanks to iNaturalist. The iNaturalist traditional Chinese version was published at the end of 2017, and we started to utilize that in 2018. But as you know, we have high school students. So when they are doing the survey, they may not be fully accurate. So now we are improving on the data quality by several methods. And the second is that I think we should build and sustain the connection of the museum and high schools to utilize the above result, the result on the first part in the training of the teachers, so that the teachers, they will have more resources. They don't have to really take the students far away, you know, on the campus, in the cities, there are just a lot of topics. And the third is that we should solidify the incentives for the museum to continue the urban tree survey. There are a lot of incentives for us to do that. For example, among the natural history museums, we've been talking about Anthropocene. Although it's a controversial term, but for me, it's kind of like a culture term. I use it as a culture term. It raises people's awareness of urban ecology, mainly the environment. We should redefine wilderness because, you know, even in natural parks, there are also consequences by human interference. And so we can emphasize or encourage people to focus on urban ecology, urban environment, because there are a lot to see, and also to counteracting the far-sighted ecologist syndrome. And I think the last point is that the reflection on actions towards indigenization. Recently, another topic is also very important that we are doing is decolonization. But I think on the other hand, while, you know, decolonizing what we have on like anthropological artifacts, our museum, we should focus in on something that is original, that is of ours, but we haven't been doing that. And by implementing urban ecological projects that's just around the museum, I think we are doing that. And we are creating the voice for the museum itself instead of just outsourcing to other experts in other universities. And so actually, next week, we have another conference. I now also work at an ICOM Natus as a secretary. And we are also talking about collection, but we have very different focus, as I can see. But I really am inspired by the colleagues of SPINIC when I had this chance to participate in the annual meeting in 2020, your enthusiasm, and your vitality to put things together. That is something that we should really learn. And also your experience, your sharing experience in those practices. But this year we are also talking about collections, but on a different scope, on a different aim. And hopefully that we will have more discussion, especially this year we have free participation for online participants. So lastly, I thank you for your attention, and also I thank all the colleagues who's been participating in our project. I hope our project can continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have time for a short question if anyone has anything. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Aaron Johnson, who unfortunately could not join us today. So we do have a 15-minute break before our next talk. So feel free to chat with previous speakers if you would like, take a break, come back in 15 minutes at noon for our next talk. Hi. Yeah, of course. I've got nothing to do.
Improvise.
I got 15 minutes.
No problem.
Yes. toes.
Yeah, you should also the very
Yeah.
incisive.
Yeah.
Very incisive.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you looked into?
Yeah, so I haven't. I do want to include a leg discussion, like the morphology of the limbs. It's fascinating as grasslands emerge, and, as their predators change and everything, right? And so I just haven't gotten around to getting that lesson put together. I don't know
It's
if.
more from what you're saying about
Yeah. I would love to print out the limbs and have them in class. Yeah. Yeah. Are those already digitized? You know?
But we do have 3D scanning.
Yeah.
And it's just before, if you go to look into it, someone's already got digitized or like somewhere to download.
I
Or there's
haven't
something
looked.
that we kind of
I haven't looked, but I'm
interesting to.
gonna make myself a note because I would love to add that on.
Because we don't use them anymore. No one uses them anymore.
Yeah.
They sit in the museum store. I've always liked them. They're just.
Yeah. What? Remind me your institution.
When I was just my paleontology curator colleague,
Yeah.
these ones have done more stuff with 3D scanning.
Yeah.
Uses for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, we do like playing around with.
Yeah. If they're not.
We have access to colleagues and then we got folks in our anatomy department who have this scanning as well.
Yeah.
And they contribute to 3D printing. I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, if they're not available online, I think that they should be. It's fairly easy if you haven't used Morphosource or if your colleagues haven't used it. It's fairly easy to upload things to Morphosource. It's an open source databasing for 3D scans, CT scans, and it includes both modern and paleo. And so it's fairly easy to upload. I would say that that's where I prefer repositing 3D data in that capacity. No, so those are from Dr. Molly Selva has created this human evolution teaching website where she's linked everything, including the lessons that she used. And she and I overlapped at the University of Florida. So I was just like, hey, how can we use this? But I think it would be really cool if the limbs aren't already made available to use those in collaboration. It's such a classic thing, but you'd be surprised how classics never make it into the paleo accessibility. One of the tragedies. But it would be really cool to partner that along with the teeth and show other portions of the animal, because you do talk about, obviously the teeth get larger, thus the animal has to be getting larger, but to have a tangible portion of limb that demonstrates that size increase would be really cool. Yeah, I would love to have those available. Yeah, thank God. Yeah, our president worked to get this really big grant to ensure that all educational materials would be free, and then the prints are so ridiculously cheap. It's like 0.02 cents per ounce that they charge because of the grant. So it's even if I had to pay, barely even paying for the plastic, right? And so it's just even if we had to pay, I would pay out of pocket because it's not as expensive. But to send them out to get printed, if we didn't have the capability, then it does get a little crazy. But yeah, that would be really cool. I will look online to see if there's anything for those limbs, and if not, I'll shoot you an email. Yeah, thank you. Awesome, fantastic. Yeah, I think I uploaded the final version the last day we were allowed to, and so I don't know if maybe I got the timing wrong. I don't know. Whatever, it's fine. I figured it out. Luckily I remembered, right? Thank you. Yeah. Spend time with you. Right?
Yeah, she's been everywhere. So exhausted. Everyone just keeps grabbing me, so instead of being
your wife treat you like this? She's not even acknowledging you. I was just like,
you are unfortunate. There was a guy. Did you get a little attention? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's not cool. And he like booked there for me.
I was like, so early in the marriage, it's already rocky. I was like, oh.
Yes, we actually are. She's like, this is your client. Yeah. 2 hours, that's all we need.
Yeah. When in Okinawa, I guess was a bad idea. My bad.
Yeah, and she got some of the money from the sorry. So it has like
I don't even know where we ended up. Shady Shack. I love that. Where they gave you meats on sticks. And it was delicious. And there was like this drunk local there that kept on trying to get drunk. That was trying to get us drunk. So like, oh yeah. Oh, I was. And then we're like, let's go and eat some more. And so we like went and ate some more. And then I was like, let's go jump in the ocean. And we like ran into some people. And then we're like, meet us down back in the lobby in 5 minutes. And then we jumped in the ocean. In the ocean until like 1 o'clock last night. I'm tired. My problem is I think that tonight is probably going to get so crazy. Yeah. So I was just like, so yes, so no. Oh, kind of. Because tomorrow we're going snorkeling and they're picking us up at 8 a.m. from Napa. So I'm going to be in Napa at 8 a.m. And it's a 7-hour excursion.
And I don't know if you want to be hungover or that.
I don't want to be hungover for this.
So they were like, ew! There's a bunch of like sub-locations at Snowmass. And one of the sub-locations is porta potties. No! And then it's on the shelf as like, this is where we're getting into localities labeled as like, these are from porta potties. It's salt! Ew, that's gonna make me gag. Just thinking about it.
They do not want you to feed the fishes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to jump in the water. I mean, maybe I do though. I'd like to see some sharks.
by the way, as a botanist,
I've always wanted to see a
So anything from the whale shark collage. I don't know offhand, but you're sometimes.
Are they guaranteed whale sharks?
No.
Are they guaranteed anything on this?
Then you should jump.
Are you chumming? What you're saying?
So you're saying you're just gonna get me really fucked up today? So
Yeah, I guess
over
you're
tomorrow.
saying you're gonna barf in the water and get all the fish to come. Is that the method?
I just want the sharks to come to me. I am a shark lady. I think I'm like the animal whisperer. I did get to see flying foxes yesterday, which I was like,
We saw one too. It was amazing. It was so close to us too. It like flew like right by. Like I could see the hair on its body.
yeah.
I could count the bristles. I could count the
It
little
was like
bristles.
on a little tree, and it was just like sitting there eating. It let me get like super close to the tree, and I was like, I tried to take a picture for my. I kept on going like this so they could hug me, but one did fly like right above me, but it didn't hug me.
Oh, so close.
So.
Is Megan still around?
I know, but it got really quiet.
We have a cool stick. Thank you.
What if I stand like this?
I am an invertebrate person. Thank you. Yeah. I'm probably gonna make some more pairs of them.
Oh, you made them?
You can buy the pieces of these. Yeah.
I want them like in a dangly because I have that little earlobes.
You could probably replace that with
I
a
also need
dangly.
to get this replaced.
But I like easy.
And you kind of dangle. I only wish it were like. Oh yeah, and I like having multiple layers because I have the other ones. I'm just. Yeah.
They have to be really heavy also.
I'm not worthy of pinching.
At one another pair that just Jeanette?
Jeanette across, no, just like across the hoop. So it's like, yeah. I wanted to be like in the line, in the lining. Oh, I've seen that.
It's because for my 15th, my mom got me a gold ring with my name on it. But my name has 8 letters, so it's a fucking like knuckle. Like knuckles.
So, Jeanette and Megan. Why do they keep getting so? We have a cool 5, my friends.
Yes.
So we were gifted this by one of our speakers as a thanks for like working with her. So if you all would like to meet, Dr. Fang, who just gave
Phaedra?
on the last. So
Root
whale
beer,
eggs.
flavored.
No, that you have it with.
Whale eggs?
Yeah, they're like fermented quail eggs.
Oh, quail. I heard whale.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't even think about the fact that they're not
Scrape them on out. Sew them back up.
We're gonna pound them tonight. It says to drink with them. Also to watch them with TV.
Oh,
and
you can also
ramen.
have them with rice. You don't mind. You can also have them with rice.
We're just gonna get some fermented quail. Not whale.
You can have them with rice. Yeah.
And popping quail eggs on the dance floor.
What?
There's gonna be food. Oh yeah. And then on the dance floor.
I think it's really
I'm very excited to try it.
You're not important.
I know it's very end.
Hi, how are you?
Yes,
I'm Nicole. I'm the next speaker.
Okay,
I introduced myself
fantastic.
before, but I think you were outside the room.
Nice to meet you. Officially, I think you're on the field trip.
Yes.
I feel like I've seen you at other spinaches. Like your face is familiar, but I don't.
I'm mostly a Chadwick person. But I was doing spinach in Dunedin and also in Edinburgh.
Yes, maybe that's. Yes. I feel like I've seen just
Thank
don't
you
like
for having
know
me in
people.
this session.
Yeah, of course.
Great session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lots and lots of photos. We have lots of students in the as well, so it's like, oh, so much to learn.
Yeah.
Really cool.
I'm excited. I think we had some excellent applications. It was really cool to see everything being done at different places. So this is my favorite session every year. So, yay.
I like this space. You're just gonna like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We have a cool 2.
Cool too. I think she's ready to go. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just gonna. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. Next up, we have Nicole Kearney. She'll be discussing unlocking the biodiversity heritage of Australia's field naturalists.
Hello, everyone. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you very much for everyone who came back to listen to these final talks of this wonderful session. So I'm Nicole Kearney. I'm the manager of the Australian branch of the Biodiversity Heritage Library, and today I'll be speaking about a really exciting new project that we've started this year, working with our regional field naturalist clubs in Australia. So the Global Biodiversity Heritage website represents the foundation of our understanding of biodiversity. This year, this incredible resource surpassed 62 million pages. Now, the majority of those pages were contributed by large, well-resourced institutions, such as our world-renowned natural history museums, herbaria, large universities, and national libraries. It's an impressive list of big names. However, these organisations only contribute their own publications and the contents of their own libraries to BHL. BHL Australia is different. We're a national consortium, nationally funded by the Atlas of Living Australia. We began operation with a single operation, Museums Victoria in Melbourne, but we now digitise and upload material to the Biodiversity Heritage Library website on behalf of 53 organisations across the entire country. These organisations include our large government-funded museums, herbaria, libraries and government agencies, but more than half of the contributing organisations in Australia are small publishers and community organisations. Today, I'm going to focus on the smallest of those, our regional field naturalist clubs, who have all joined BHL this year as part of our special new project. The project is entitled Capturing the History of Victoria's Field Naturalist Clubs. It's funded by a local history grant which came to us from the Public Record Office of Victoria, and these grants aim to preserve, share and record the local history of our home state of Victoria. Now, in preparation for this grant, I wrote to all of our local field naturalist clubs in Victoria asking for their support and cooperation with this project. And I received 8 really enthusiastic letters of support back from those organisations, and we've been working with all of them this year. In my grant application, I emphasised the importance of Field Naturalist Club publications and how important it was to have them freely accessible online, emphasising that these publications contain really important information about the local flora and fauna of their local areas across quite a large period of time, and that these observations are really important to enable our understanding of the changes in distribution and abundance across time, as well as the appearance and disappearance of key species such as threatened and endangered species and pest and introduced species. These regional publications also contain the rich social and community histories of the organisations themselves. This, for example, is a picture of the ladies' tents from the Tasmanian Field Naturalist Club's report on the Easter camp from the Freycinet Peninsula in Tasmania from 1909. So this is a record of the contribution that women were making to our understanding of biodiversity in this local regional area in the early 1900s. So the Victorian Field Naturalist Club publications began in the 1800s. Most of those continue through to the current day. Before we started this project, most of the back issues of these publications were available nowhere online, and many of the hard copies were really difficult to access. In fact, some of them were only in the basements or the attics of ageing club members. So we were super excited to get this grant, and we've been receiving the publications of these field naturalist clubs to digitise all year. Most of these are newsletters and bulletins that are published usually monthly across time. But we've also been receiving publications such as this field guide of their local area, and a whole lot of handwritten materials such as this register of observations of birds. So this one contains bird observations from the 1960s and 70s. The digitisation of those materials has been done by our fabulous, the only other staff member in BHL Australia, Jack Eastor. Thank you to him, and also for the data processing and image processing of this work has been done by our incredible BHL volunteers. We received a small amount of funding for travel, quite a small amount. We've been travelling by train to each of the regional locations across Victoria. We've been giving presentations at their members' meetings and speaking to them about their incredible knowledge of their local biodiversity. And most importantly, we've been able to demonstrate to them how having their 150 plus years of observational data is now available and freely accessible on the BHL website. So many of you in the audience might be familiar with the BHL website and the incredible functionality that it provides for research, but I'm going to point out just a couple of the features that our field naturalists found the most impressive. First, article discoverability. They were amazed that we could now discover all of the articles in their publications online. So this, for example, is a newsletter, an article called Orchids of the Ballarat Region. And if I click on that article link, I'm taken through to an article landing page on BHL that contains all of the bibliographic data for that article. And putting that article data into BHL makes those articles not just discoverable within the BHL catalogue, but also via external search engines. And we've also been assigning digital object identifiers, or DOIs, to their articles, which brings all that historic knowledge into the modern linked network of scholarly research and provides a persistent link that people can cite. This particular article was authored by Emily Noble, who's the secretary of the Ballarat Field Naturalist Club, and she's now an entity in her own right in the BHL catalogue, like the article is. And she was so thrilled that she could click on her own name and be taken through to every single article that she'd authored across the whole of the BHL website, not just from her home publication, the Ballarat Naturalist, but from others that she'd published in. Secondly, they were blown away by the fact that BHL pulls out every scientific name from all of their publications, and that they could click on those scientific names and be taken through to a list of every single mention of that scientific name in BHL across all those 62 million pages. And I could scroll down and show them that of those 412 mentions of this large duck orchid, 16 were from their publication. So I could show them that this is their contribution to the understanding of the biodiversity of this species that's now freely accessible for everyone. These are some of those mentions. They not only have a date and a location, but they also provide additional information like indications of abundance and flowering times. So that first one there, they saw a solitary orchid on their particular excursion in 2009. And then in 1980, they saw more than 200 in this little small area. And I really love this one. They said the finding of 1 or 2 of these orchids is always a thrill for field naturalists. But this amazing proliferation was a sight that none present would ever forget. So that was lovely. Thirdly, they were super excited that you could link from the biodiversity knowledge in their publications to all the other biodiversity knowledge online. And so they could click on those little DNA symbols and be shown all of the mentions of those species in our taxonomic databases. So they could link through to the Encyclopedia of Life and to GBIF. But they were most excited that you could link to iNaturalist. So you could link directly from those mentions in their publications through to the profile pages on iNaturalist. And then from every profile in iNaturalist, you can click through to the mentions of that species in BHL. So every single mention across all our 62 million pages, including the ones in their publications. So iNaturalist is of huge importance to these field naturalist clubs because most of them are now using the app to record and share their scientific observations. This is the main project page for the Ballarat Field Naturalist Club, and I say main because this club has 16 active projects on iNaturalist. These organisations are also now hosting the BioBlitzes in their local regions, and many of them are also running workshops and training sessions, encouraging their local communities to use iNaturalist and to participate in their local BioBlitz events. And then they're reporting on those BioBlitz events in their newsletters, which are now we're making available on BHL. And we've got this current month's newsletters going up. We upload material from the current month onto BHL. So we've got material from the 1400s on BHL all the way through from BHL Australia to the current day. So these are 3 different reports from 3 different clubs, 3 different parts of Victoria. I particularly loved this quote from the Castlemaine Naturalists BioBlitz last year. They said, another huge effort, again, delivering invaluable data for biodiversity records and research, and this is probably most importantly, lots of learning and delights for all involved. So these invaluable records are going through iNaturalist into the Atlas of Living Australia's databases, and these incredible results are now available online. I'm just going to talk about the other grant that we received this year related to this project from Wikimedia Australia, which allows us to gather the rich social and natural histories of Victoria's regional field naturalist clubs, make them available across the Wikimedia platforms and link on these elements together. And this was really important work because these small regional field naturalist clubs had no presence on Wikipedia before we started this work. So we've been creating Wikipedia pages for them, complete with current activities and histories sections, details of their publications and their publication histories, and reference lists. And we've been linking all of those references through to the publications that we've made available online. So this was a 4-month Wikimedia funded project. We created 5 brand new articles for our clubs during that time. We greatly expanded 29 others, adding a total of 27,000 words to Wikipedia and 292 references, as well as adding images to Wikimedia Commons. So the digitisation work is still continuing. We're funded for a full year for that project. We've now added 34,000 pages from the publications of Victoria's community field naturalist clubs to BHL. And most excitingly for me is news of this work is spreading. So we've been contacted by other field naturalist clubs who now want to come on board. We've been uploading material from the Inaminka field, Friends of the Inaminka Reserves, and we're just about to start uploading the material from the Hamilton Field Naturalist Club. So that's what we've been focusing on this year at BHL Australia, along with all the scholarly publications and the rare books we put online. We've really been really excited to work with these naturalist clubs to make all their incredible local, long-term, regional knowledge and understanding of our biodiversity freely accessible and discoverable online. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. We do have time for some questions. So if you have any questions, please make your way to the mics.
Thanks, Nicole. That was great. Always keen to hear what you're doing at BHL because it's always fantastic. Those 8 field naturalist groups, like there are more, are there more active ones in the state? Because I
There
was
are more.
immediately thinking, so Eileen Ramsey was one of the founding members of the Sunraysia Field Naturalists Club. And for various reasons, like a lot of our contributors to the herbarium were field nats, especially around the early 20th century. And this kind of resource will be absolutely invaluable for us for being able to find out more about those collectors and enhance the quality of our collections. So I just really thank you.
Yeah, there are more. We kind of focused on some of the really big ones to begin with. We knew we only had a year. I only had one staff member funded 1 day a week to work on the digitisation of these materials. The talks that we've been doing at the little clubs have encouraged others to get involved. We've been asked to keynote at the SENA Easter Camp next year, which is the Southeast Australian Naturalist Associations Club, and I'm sure that's going to lead to more and more of them coming. But we're not, you know, it's all funded by grants. But we are funded nationally by the Arts of Living Australia to make Australia's biodiversity knowledge freely accessible online. So this actually falls into my core project funding as well as this kind of grant funding. So we will continue to work with naturalists.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
My buddies in the audience, I did not plant the questions.
Sorry, no, this is a question which I don't know the answer to. Do you know of any other possibilities with Wikimedia Australia, like funding for this type of work or similar work that you might be able to access?
Particularly from Wikimedia Australia?
Yeah.
I mean, this was a partner project. It wasn't a Wikimedia in Residence project. There's a little distinction between the two. Wikimedia in Residence projects, you're supposed to have someone come and train your organisation how to do Wikimedia and Wikimedia related work, like what you've just done at Te Papa, developing a tool that they can use and teaching them how to use it. So ours was a slightly different type of project. So they do still have Wikimedia in Residence. We could do that. As I said, we only had 4 months of 1 day a week. Yeah. So it was quite a limited amount of work, but we've continued to do that. The clubs are still sending us information that they'd like us to add. So, cool. But I'm sure you probably have more ideas than I would.
Okay, yeah, cool, thanks.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Our next speaker, Lennart, will be virtual. Speaking on building new opportunities, planning towards integrated, open, and accessible natural history collections.
Hello, my name is Lennart, and I'm the head of collections in Estonian Museum of Natural History. I'd like to share a glimpse into one of the most significant developmental leaps in our museum's 160 years history. We are building a new house and meeting lots of new opportunities. In this presentation, I am focusing on how we are planning to make our collections more integrated, open, and accessible. This is our current museum building, quite small. Some people refer to it as a boutique museum. The museum has played a significant role in advancing the natural sciences. Today, it continues to focus on expanding its collection, conducting research, curating exhibitions, and providing nature education. Currently, 95% of the museum's collections are digitized. These are published in GBIF with the original data housed on the Pluto-F and SARV platforms. In total, approximately 360,000 specimens are preserved in the museum storage facilities dating back to 200 years. The museum attracts around 50,000 visitors annually, many of whom are children participating in educational programs and families with children. The museum's collection is centered on Estonia's natural heritage and includes extensive mycological, zoological, and botanical collections, and also geological and science historical specimens, along with photo and multimedia collections. On the left, you see the oldest sea urchin in the world found in Estonia. On the right is a photo of first time when the museum decided to collect mushrooms for exhibition. The tradition continues of course with a few upgrades in style. This year's exhibition marks the 61st time mushrooms have taken center stage, proving that Estonians can't resist a good mushroom hunt. For half of its time, 30 years, we've been dreaming of a new building where we can properly preserve our collections and share them with our visitors. And now we're closer than ever to making that dream a reality. By constructing a new building planned to open in 2027, new opportunities arise. The contemporary museum constitutes a shared space of thought, recognizing the importance of nature and supported by a science-based approach with open collections and lifestyle-changing experiences. As a new community center, the museum provides an opportunity for visitors, emerging professionals, citizen scientists, students, etc., to share their knowledge of the importance of biodiversity and its entanglement. We engage target groups from school children to specialists during the planning process to make a museum that fulfills all needs. The new museum is planned as a platform that engages the society, initiates discussions and brings together various target and interest groups and environmental topics. By planning and building a new museum, a new infrastructure for the natural history collections, we develop both digital and physical functionality and make the natural history collections more accessible to all interest groups. The value and role of natural history collections for nature conservation and society increases over time with the development of new information systems, methods, and collection research. We also need a new infrastructure to support the renewed concept. Here are some examples of the numerical growth the building will bring us. For instance, we will have 10 times more exhibition space and the area for collections will be more than 50% larger than its current size. But from the outside, a person cannot perceive how many people work in the museum, how big and unique our collections are, and what kind of work is done behind the scenes. It is also not known what the role of collections is in science education and society in general. Next, I will introduce you to, ideas on how we will present the collections to visitors in the new building. We create the additional workspace that we couldn't accommodate in the old building due to space limitations. We have 8 curator positions and in the new museum 6 workspaces are available for students, researchers and interns. This is one of the workrooms. We call it a crazy scientist room. There is traditional curator working spaces and then some flexible spaces for different projects. And you can see there is a window into the exhibition area. So the exhibition hall features display windows that allow visitors to peer into the museum's curator workspace, collection rooms and, for example, wet preparations lab. Embracing the principle of an open collection, the museum offers a unique opportunity to observe how specimens are stored and the procedures involved in their preservation. Designing display windows for the collection presents a challenge, ensuring they do not damage the specimens. This requires the use of UV glass, reduced lighting, and specimens that are not sensitive to light. On the other hand, the challenge is to design the display windows in a way that doesn't interfere with the curator's personal space, while still offering something for the visitors to see. The design of the visitor journey in the museum exhibition will also consider views into the nature collection storage rooms and curators' workspaces. This way, the usually hidden part of the museum is integrated to the exhibition. In one room, we plan a mixed collections room where we will keep education collections. It is a storage facility where all the different methods of storing and preparing specimens are presented, and where groups can be taken to talk about the collections. In the temporary exhibition hall, where the one people is standing there, is a window into the storage area that offers a glimpse of various collections. This space can be designed to align with the theme of the temporary exhibition. On the second floor, there will be a learning laboratories, classes, and room with direct street access for workshops, meetings, and experimental exhibitions. It's making easier to engage people who pass by. Some of the ideas I used help of AI to generate some pictures. In the exhibition area, there will be this multifunctional activity space where museum staff can showcase various aspects of their work. For example, visitors might observe an entomologist preparing insect specimens or a botanist working with herbarium sheets. When the curator is not actively presenting, the curator's desk will feature displays of the world's biodiversity. For example, tropical butterflies, which we cannot show in Estonian nature-centered exhibition. The activity space gives visitors an opportunity to engage with hands-on activities, such as getting familiar with tools and techniques used in collecting specimens. This helps to connect them with the museum's work. The journey of a single specimen can be shown, how it makes its way from collection to display, what is needed to prepare it for the display. This can be demonstrated and encouraging visitors to participate by collecting their own specimens, of course with guidance on what is appropriate to collect. This interactive space offers visitors the chance to step into the roles of botanists, zoologists, or conservators, providing an immersive and enlightening experience. So the future natural scientists might find themselves right there. We also plan to build an digitization lab to get high quality photos, 3D scanner, and some improved digital imaging quality techniques to make our digitalized collection more approachable. A significant part of making collections accessible involves conservation, and it needs a good workshop, but it can be also used for making models, preparing something, and for taxidermy. In new building, we also will have opportunities to open up the collections, to put out some rare specimens into the public space, and also we are some ideas of making geological park. And also the outside park will be experimental. We will try to make some habitats there and see how they get on in city environment. And yeah, that's all. So thank you, and I'm open for the questions.
Thank you. So if there are any questions, we do have some time. This is a live transmission, so any questions can be given from the mics or through the live chat as well.
So is the speaker actually online? Oh, okay. So my question was the one room that you're designating for like the teaching and outreach specimens. Do you have any concerns or plans for IPM management when you're having zoological and entomological collections in the same space? So is there any maybe, I don't know, air handling and climate control that you're really focusing on to reduce the need for constant monitoring? Or are you planning to constant monitor in that space? Thank you. Great talk.
Thank you. Hello. I'm sorry I cannot start my video. It just worked this morning, but now it's not working. But about the question, yes, we plan. We don't have right now the good IPM but we plan to make it in the new museum. We do use some of the techniques like this traps for insects and monitoring, but it's not so well regulated right now. But yes, in the new building it will be taught well, and also this room I was talking about. This is yes, the most. It has lots of attention on this one because yeah, it has very different collections inside.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Lennart, for joining. Oh, actually, we have one more.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much for offering such an excellent talk. We were really admiring the different models and layouts you did of your proposed plan. Do you mind expanding a little bit more on how you created the design, what that would look like moving forward, etc.?
Yeah, actually we have our building. It has 3D model, so we can go and look around inside the rooms and plan how we make our what we can put inside, what are the sizes, the exact sizes we can, so we can prevent anything that will usually come out when you try to put like real things together. So the 3D models help a lot building this house right now. It's a really complex house. And also, yeah, these last pictures, I used AI to just visualize my ideas. So these were, of course, something that probably will not come to life, but something similar to that will be there. And also the first pictures, these were visualizations by architects that were making this winning work of this house. So it had so very many works. It was this kind of how to say concours. So there were many works, and this one was selected because it connects different buildings, and the museum is in the center of these 3 buildings. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Cheng-Te Su, discussing the establishment of urban green space phenology observation program through urban ecosystem environmental education.
Hello everyone, I'm Cheng-Te from Taiwan Forestry Research Institute. Today I will be present on the topic establishment of urban green space phenology observation program through urban ecosystem environmental education. First, I would like to explain why urban green space are so important for cities. Green space provide not only area for recreation, but a crucial part of the urban ecosystem. They regulate temperature, improve air quality, and support diversity. In this context, phenology observation is vital as it tracks plant and animal response to seasonal change, helping us understand how environment change affect ecosystem. So we choose to conduct phenology observations in this green space because they are the core of the urban ecosystem and actually also reaching biodiversity. Though The urban environment seems stable. Subtle change often go unnoticed to reveal the dynamics of the ecosystem. Phenological observations help us capture this change and understand how the city evolved over time. This process deciphers the relationship between the city and nature. Offering insights is crucial for sustainable urban development. So we can notice the things from this student's poem. We can see that phenological observations are everywhere. Yeah, I like poems. But where is the phenological observation data? Through this program, we aim to emphasize our effort in establishing a survey process tailored for local community, allowing us to quickly generate observation data that meets fair standards. In doing so, we hope to not only better collect and integrate data, but also enhance its usability and openness. So to establish a phenological survey, we formed a team to bring this idea to life. So we try to make things happen and tried very hard. And there's many trials and errors. Yeah. So this project was carried out in 2 parks located in Taipei, Taiwan. In 2014, we initiated the conceptual development by incorporating university students survives a learning course into this project and conduct the following survey. However, in the early stage, we included too many surveys beyond phenology, such as tree diameter measurements and animal surveys, and the tree species we observed were quite diverse. So we modified it. In 2017, we narrowed down the species for the survey, selecting those whose phenological phenomena were easier to observe, and increased the number of samples for each species to 3 individuals. And in 2018, we transitioned the survey's paper-based record to an online version in iNaturalist. In 2023, we revised the recording method for the phenological stage, replacing subjective qualitative record with quantifiable data. So here is the workflow of our survey project. First, we conduct training and introduce the use of the iNaturalist platform, following by a quiz and practice survey. After that, the student proceeds with recording phenological observations by themselves. The data can be immediately applied to other research areas, such as pest and disease monitoring. So let's start with the basics. The first instructional content will briefly cover the basic botany and phenology, focusing on the definition of phenological trait, phenophase, and the methods for quantifying this trait. And next, we'll teach the basic operations of iNaturalist app and how to put data into the project survey field. And there's a locality, tree number, and phenological traits like flower amount, flower ratio, and the fruits. So fruit amount, the fruit ratio, and also leaf. Online folder effectively reduce the time need for data digitization and minimize the input error. Yeah, and then we have students take a short quiz to ensure they understand what we are talking about, understand quantification standards, and help to which helps maintain the survey quality. After that, the students next up we go to the park for field practice, starting with finding tree using a tree map and induce basic information about tree species and then describe their phenological state. After that, the students participating in the project will take turn and record phenological observation on a weekly basis. Let's look at the data flow. After downloading the phenological observation data from the iNaturalist project, the phenological trait field are standardized using PPO terms, while other fields such as data and vernacular name are handling with Darwin code terms. Vernacular names are converted to scientific name using Tyco. And this step, the structural data is ready for further analysis and visualization. Below here some examples, some statistics and visualizations, such as the total tree survey, the number of survey per tree, flowering or fruit period. So there's a question from our team. Since the project began, our team want to know how many participants, after being involved in the project for several years, continue to use iNaturalist and contribute diversity data, as shown in the chart. You can see students continue to observe and record with iNaturalist even after participating in the program. So this area is students are enthusiastic about observing and recording. Yeah, I like them. Also, but still some improvement. The improvement the future plan parts. There are still many work to do, including maintain the stability of phenology observation record and optimizing data collection during summer and winter break because they are students. Yeah, so there's a data gap. And uploading data to GBIF using Darwin code and PPO and integrated climate data and the result data dashboard. Oh, sorry, it's okay. So we can move forward with this work, yeah, and. So the program would like to thank the National Taiwan Museum and the Department of Life Science and at the National Taiwan University for the funding and the administration supporting. And to conclude, I would like to share a poem I wrote about the phenology. Yeah, class start and end, 9 to 5 daily green, everything around us remains unchanged until multiplied by the dimension of time, it becomes life. Observing the plants around, watching as time flows, spilling out orange, yellow, and greens. A pool of red, greens, yellow, and browns. We call it Phenology. Yeah, translated by ChatGPT. Yeah, that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. We do have a couple minutes for questions. So if anyone would like to make their way to the mics or in the chat. All right, thank you so much. Our final speaker for the session, Samanta Orellana, will be discussing the interactive checklist to increase access to urban biodiversity information in Guatemala, and this will be done through Zoom. So thank you for setting that up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Samanta Orellana. I am a PhD candidate at Arizona State University and the International Community Coordinator for the Symbiotic Support Hub. Today, I have the privilege of presenting about our project on interactive checklists to increase access to urban biodiversity information in collaboration with a team from the Guatemalan Conservation Data Center, led by the first author, Dr. Fernando Castillo. Guatemala, also my home country, is located in Central America, and its capital, Guatemala City, is one of the most populated cities in the region. Surprisingly, over 40% of Guatemala City is still covered with green spaces, mainly comprised of ravines surrounding the metropolitan area. These protected spaces, known as the Green Urban Belt, however, are vulnerable to accelerated urban growth, which often results in environmental degradation and even local species extinctions. The Conservation Data Center, as part of the National University in Guatemala, conducts biodiversity research countrywide to promote its conservation. So back in 2023, this team started the Urban Biodiversity Project with a series of surveys to evaluate the conservation status of local species and to increase the knowledge on urban biodiversity. 6 localities in the Green Urban Belt were sampled in collaboration with municipal authorities and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. With all the new biodiversity records obtained during the project, the team was in search of an efficient way to process and manage the data. And this is really where I come into play and what this talk is going to be focused on from now on. So a publication specifically about the project is coming out soon for you to learn more details about the research and the actual outcomes of the surveys. So back to digitization and data management. Since 2020, I have been in charge of a customized Symbiotic portal, the Guatemala Biodiversity Portal, or Guatemala Portal for short, designed specifically for local biodiversity collections and projects. More than 40 virtual profiles are currently active in the portal, contributing over 50,000 original records and images. At the same time, the portal works as a GBIF installation, a mid-size aggregator, and has a wide variety of interactive tools available in English and Spanish. A full presentation about the Guatemala Biodiversity Portal is going to be part of Symposium 30 if you want to learn more about this. At the beginning of 2024, we started meeting online with the Conservation Data Center team to discuss using the Guatemala portal to manage the data obtained during their project. A big motivation was that specimens collected during the project were already being digitized in the existing virtual profiles for the collections in Guatemala, making the records instantly available and mobilized directly to GBIF. With all this information already available online, the Conservation Data Center requested something similar for the observation records of individuals that were not collected during the surveys. So 2 new online management profiles were created to digitize fauna and flora observations. Just like the regular collection profiles, information can be transcribed and images can be added to generate each digital record for the observations. And like all Symbiota portals, digital records follow biodiversity data standards and FAIR principles, ensuring instant availability of new biodiversity data with open records. In fact, this record on the screen was published in May by Daniel Tenes, Ana Lucia Grajeda, and Claudia Burgos, three of the co-authors of this talk, as an important range expansion for the species. So having the record available in the portal is very important to increase access. So when we are talking about this open access to biodiversity records, we also have to be cautious with, for example, protected or endangered species. And in the portal, we redact exact locality information of these type of species from the public view. This to avoid any misuse of the information. So with all this information available, we condense everything on interactive species checklists that not only present the list of species that were recorded, but also allowed, for example, to annotate the conservation status of each species. It allows to add vouchers, in this case, the observations and specimens already digitized in the portal. And for example, you can export the list in various formats, or you can generate maps for all vouchers or for selected species. For example, here you can see the 6 localities where the urban biodiversity project was conducted. So the species checklist can also be displayed as an image gallery, facilitating access to all users. To increase the functionality of this checklist, we search for more available records, including specimens and observations in Guatemalan collections, digitized directly into the portal, and specimens digitized in foreign collections that were imported to the portal from aggregators. So with all this information, we ended up creating this huge inventory project in the Guatemala portal with a compilation of checklists for all taxa, including additional curated records for every group. So the number of records and species increased considerably, and much more information is now available for consultation. Additional records were very valuable, not just in number, but they allow to include key species previously recorded in the city, but not found during the survey. For example, this endemic snake reported by Renato Morales, one of the co-authors of this talk, a few years ago. So the record was digitized in the portal for that publication, and the information on the species page was already included about the conservation status of the species. So we, additional to the occurrence records, we try to add this type of information to each species pages to increase the information available. So at this point, all specimens and observations recorded during the Urban Biodiversity Project are available in the Guatemala portal, but we are constantly adding information, images, and annotations to improve the checklist. So with this, we encourage and welcome researchers in Guatemala to join our efforts in recording the biodiversity of these and other regions in the country. And we also motivate researchers all around the world to keep supporting collections with their projects, and also promoting and enabling digitization to facilitate access to biodiversity data to wider audiences. Finally, we want to thank the conference and symposium organizers for the opportunity to present our talk, and we want to acknowledge local authorities and IUCN for the support in completing the fieldwork. We thank all the collections and researchers for making their data fair and easy to use. Here is my contact information. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be taking any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for that. Any questions for Samanta Orellana? You're more than welcome to put them in the chat if you're online or make your way to the mic. The data sets for the work that was presented that are on GBIF have also been uploaded to the link on the chat if you are online, and should be available in the recordings as well for later access. All right, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of our speakers and for attending this session. I know I greatly enjoyed all of it. Next is lunch or so y'all have a couple more minutes to catch any of the later talks, and we will see you around. Thank you.
It's gonna be nice, warm.
Yeah. Big toast.
Outside?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like 90, huh?
Yeah.
Yum.
I do not.
I crave it. Like some people crave minerals.
I crave cheese.
Oh yeah. What?
Said I crave cheese.
I mean, that too. It doesn't have to